Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video we will be sewing our first top as part of part 2, the top series. So this video we will be sewing the boxy top. So the pattern that we will be using for this boxy top is Simplicity 1366. Now on this pattern, my pattern says Simplicity 0577. So it's 0577 if you picked up the pattern from the display. If you did not and you looked in the drawer when this pattern was out, because this pattern is from summer 2014. So it's an old pattern. You may be able to find it on Amazon or Etsy or even maybe eBay. So you could try to find there, look there in order to find this pattern. But once again, it's Simplicity 1366. And in this video, I will be sewing view D, the boxy top. So let's go ahead and talk about the supplies you will need in order to construct this boxy top. All right, so let's talk about the supplies and tools that you will need in order to construct this boxy top. The first thing that you will need is, of course, the pattern. You will need 2 rotary cutters if you want to cut your pattern with a rotary cutter or scissors. That's completely up to you. That's a personal preference. But I use 2 rotary cutters, one for paper, one for fabric. I never mix the 2. I have a pair of scissors, one for paper, one for fabric. I never mix the 2. Now at the sewing machines, I use my thread clippers to cut thread. And then I have a set of pins and a seam ripper. That's all the supplies that you're going to need in order to construct this top. Now, I do want to make notes that this boxy top that I'm doing is view D on this pattern. You will not need any buttons, zippers, or any interfacing for this top. So all you need is just the pattern pieces. So speaking of pattern pieces, let's go ahead and get into the pattern and the pieces that you will need in order to construct this boxy top. All right, so let's talk about the pattern pieces that you will need in order to construct this top. The first pattern piece you will need is pattern piece number 9, which is the front. You need to cut 1 unfold. The next pattern piece you will need is pattern piece number 10, which is the back. You need to cut 1 unfold. Now, one thing I want to mention is on pattern piece number 10, please make sure that the pattern piece is facing down on your fabric like you see here, and then cut around your pattern piece, but making sure that your pattern piece is on the fold of fabric. The next pattern piece that you will need is pattern piece number 11, which is your neck facing. You need to cut 1, so a single layer of fabric. Make sure you cut 1. And the last pattern piece you will need is pattern piece number 12, which is your sleeve. You need to cut 2. That's all the pattern pieces that you will need in order to construct this top. So let's go ahead and get right on into the sewing. Okay, so let's go ahead and construct our boxy top. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 9 and pattern piece number 10. So the first thing you need to do is go ahead and stay stitch the neck area of both pattern piece number 9 and pattern piece number 10. So go ahead and stay stitch. All right, so now that you have stay stitched your pattern, your front and back pattern piece, now this is pattern piece number 10, facing up. This is the right side of the fabric. You want to put your front pattern piece, which is pattern piece number 9. And I went ahead and made an X and put the number on there so I know which one is the front and which one is the back. So once I have stay stitched both the front and the back, I'm going to go ahead and pin at the shoulders to attach my shoulder seam. So make sure you are pinning at the notch. And using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and make sure you sew across both shoulder seams and finish off both seam allowance. So you can finish it off with your pinking shears or your serger. I'm just going to go ahead and serge both shoulder seams. Okay, so now that you have sewn your shoulder seams together and went ahead and serged the edges, go ahead and put your top aside for just 1 second and grab your neck band. So now you should have cut 1 neck facing And what you want to do is with wrong sides together. Now I made an X on mine to symbolize which side is the wrong side. You want to fold it in half with wrong sides together, and then you want to base the top edge. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that you have your neck facing completely wrong sides together, I pressed it and then I went ahead and basted it across the raw edge. Now go ahead and grab your top or your bodice and make sure you have it right sides out. Now, once again, you need to know which side is the front and the back. Now this is my front and I have my front and my back. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pin with right sides together. So this is right sides together. And you want to match up your notches as well as your dots. Now the dots match up to your shoulder seams and the notches match up to the back of your top. So I'm going to start at the back where my notches is. So here's a notch right here. So I want to match that up with that notch and pin. And then you have a dot. So the dot matches up to the shoulder seam. So you should have pressed your seams towards the back of your garment. If you haven't, you can still do so now. And make sure you pin at that shoulder seam. And then you're just going to pin all the way around your neck area in order to keep everything together. So go ahead and finish pinning all the way around. All right, so now that you have everything pinned all the way around, I want to say what I'm going to do before I completely sew my neck edge. I'm going to stitch both of these together, right sides together, and I'm going to stitch right here at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to press it open. And then I'm going to sew my neck facing. I went ahead and pinned it first to make sure that my notches are matching up correctly. So I'm going to do that first. Go ahead, right sides together. You're going to do that, and then you're going to stitch them together using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, press them open, and then stitch around your neck facing. Go ahead and do that. All right, so one thing that I want to mention is I went ahead and pinned all the way around my neck facing. I went ahead and sewn the neck facing using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, trimmed it down, and then pressed it open. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and stitch around the neck facing using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to trim and press my seams up towards the facing in order to understitch. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that you have attached your neck facing onto your top, what I'm going to do is go ahead and trim down just a tad bit because it's not much that you want to trim down, and you want to be careful that you do not clip through your thread. So just trim just a little bit, not a lot, and you do not want to clip your top. And once you have trimmed your facing down, go ahead and press the facing up towards the neck bend. So you're going to press your facing up towards the neck bend, and then you want to understitch, and you want to understitch on the facing. So you want to understitch on this side. So go ahead and do your understitching. Okay, so now that I have went ahead and understitched my facing, so the next thing that you should do, or I'm going to do, is go ahead and fold the facing where you understitch to the inside. So you're going to fold it into the wrong side, give it a good press, and then you want to top stitch to secure this edge. So I want to say it's about 3/8 of an inch. So you're going to top stitch about 3/8 of an inch to catch this this inside to catch the facing onto the inside. So you want to top stitch all the way around. So go ahead and do that. If you have a label, go ahead and insert your label once you go ahead and top stitch. So after you top stitch all the way around, go ahead and insert your label. Okay, so now that I have went ahead and pressed my neckband up into shape, now I'm going to clean up all the stitching on my neckband at the very end to give it, you know, to make sure that it's nice and pressed and make sure that all the extra stitching is not showing. So I'll do that at the very end. So the next thing you want to do is put your top aside for just 1 second and grab your sleeve. Now, one thing I want to make note of is you're going to turn up 1 1/4 inches. So 1 1/4 inches. So on the wrong side, this is the wrong side of mine, you're going to press up 1 1/4 inches, fold it back down, and then go ahead and fold up 1/4 inch to give you 1 inch right here. And then on the right side, once you do that, on the right side, go ahead and stitch your hem. Go ahead and do that now. Reason being is because I like to stitch my hem before I put my sleeve onto my bodice. So now that you have went ahead and stitched your hem in place, hope you went ahead and did that, go ahead and grab your bodice. All right, so I have done one of my sleeves already. I'm gonna show you what I did. So getting the other sleeve prepared for the bodice, you're going to open it out. So we are using the flat method. And you're going to have your bodice right side out. And then you want to put the right side, this is the right side of your sleeve right on top. Now make sure you have 2 notches at the back and 1 notch at the front. So what you're going to do is matching up your notches, you're going to go ahead and pin. So there's 2 notches right here. So I'm going to pin my 2 notches right there. And then I'm going to pin my 2 dots, dot right here, dot right there. You want to make sure those are matching up. And then you're going to pin the rest of the sleeve in place into that armhole. And so back stitch at the beginning, go around and back stitch at the end, and then you're going to finish off your seam allowance. All right, so now that my sleeve is sewn on and serged, what you want to do is go ahead and with right sides together, you want to match up your sleeves. So you're going to go ahead and sew your side seams. So you're going to sew the side seam and the sleeve together all in one continuous seam. One continuous stitch. Cannot talk today. All right, so we'll go ahead and pin at this notch. And I'm going to pin at the bottom as well. And I'm going to pin all the way up the seam evenly as well. Now using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to back stitch at the beginning. So all the way down the sleeve, through the sleeve, and back stitch at the end. And then you're going to serge your edges, your seam allowance. So go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to start at my hem or the bottom, and then sew all the way through to the sleeve, back stitching at the beginning and at the end, and then finish off my seam allowance. Okay, so now that I have finished off my side seam and my sleeve, the only thing left to do is go ahead and hem the top and you will be all done. So in order to hem it, what you're going to do is press up 1 1/4 inches, that's 1 1/4. And then once you press it all the way around, you're going to turn up 1/4 inch. So you're going to turn up 1 1/4. I have not done this, but I will do this. 1 1/4. Then you're going to press, open it out, turn up 1/4 inch, press, and then turn up that 1 1/4 inch, encasing that 1/4 of an inch there. And then you're going to stitch as close to the edge as possible on the right side of your fabric. So you do not want to stitch on the wrong side, stitch on the right side of your fabric, and then give it a nice lovely press. Once you do that, you are all done. So there you have it. You just completed your first top as the Top Series Part 2 Spring Top Collection. So like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep sewing.